Welcome back. Today we'll learn to build the world's best tip calculator. And in doing so, you'll learn a lot of concepts specific to iOS development and also generally that relates to coding and programming. So let's get started here. I'm going to start a new Xcode project, single view application. Let's name it tipcalc 2 and save it and expand this. I'll leave everything as the default, jump over to our main storyboard. Here we are going to use a 4-inch work area. With this tip calculator, what we'll be keeping three things in mind. First, we are not going to ask the user to enter a tip percentage so that it's not just a glorified calculator. Instead, the user is going to say how the service was, whether it was good, excellent, and the app will provide the solution in terms of how much the tip and the total amount should be. Two, dining being a social experience, the bill is going to be split more than one way if we are dining out with a group of friends. So the app would enable that. And then the third piece is usually when we are traveling abroad to a different country, we don't know what is the customary tip percentage over there. So we'll find a solution to that as well. So let's get started. You're viewing the main storyboard. First, I'm going to bring in a text field, and the placeholder is going to be bill amount. Center align it. I need a second text field, and this is going to we're going to name it split. Again, center align. I want button, make it slightly bigger. The text will be calculate. Then I need a label. Let me drop it here. Make it way bigger. I'm going to leave it left aligned. Default text, some placeholder. I'm going to make the font size really small because this is going to hold uh, quite a bit of text in it. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this multi-line. That is because if we want several tip percentages to be shown, like 15%, 18%, we need more than one lines. How do you do that? You go to the number of lines over here and mark it as 0. 0 means it can have more than one line. So a little bit counterintuitive, but that would tell Swift what's needed. Here I'm going to attempt something new. This is new in Swift 2 or Xcode 7, and it'll work only if the target operating system is iOS 9 or above. Remember how we used to spend a lot of time using the auto layout buttons over here and adding constraints so that it appeared correct on screens of different sizes? All the need to do all that is now gone away with the new version of Xcode with this little button over here called stack. when you click on stack, iOS is going to manage the layout and make it responsive, and it'll make sure that it looks good on all screen sizes, etc. You lose a little bit of control of how you can place the things within a stack view over here. Uh, but that's exactly what we want. We want Xcode to take care of all that. So all these elements that we added is now part of one view. I usually like to give it a little bit more breathing space between elements over here. So let's see how we can do that. Maybe this will do the trick. Yep. I'm going to increase the spacing a little bit. Now, once you have a view like this, you can actually, you would continue to use all of the things that you learned previously. You want this entire view to be center aligned in the container. So you are going to add uh, that constraint. But now you can see it's much easier. Our job is to just do it one time for this entire view as opposed to each individual form element over here. So once we have that, that will take care of this form appearing all good on all devices, all size. And now since we have center aligned the whole view, it's going to look okay in different orientation of, um, of your phone or other iOS device as well. Now once we have all of this, the next step would be to bring up our assistant editor over here, and as you're used to, I'm going to drag and drop this. I'm going to name this text bill amount. Make the connection. After this, I'm going to drag the next one. Let's name this text split. I want this label. I'm going to name that label output. Connect. So there you go. So all these elements are now connected to the code, and we can move on to now manipulating whatever we want to do here within the code. So the first, there's one more thing to be done over here. When I click the button, what I want to do is going to go within this function. If you remember, I'm going to define that as an action, and I'm going to name it button calculate press connect. Whatever I want to happen goes inside this. So from the last time, I'm going to bring in some code so that we don't have to write up all the math again. I have it saved over here. And to quickly review, I'm going to give you a quick refresher. Let me make some space here on the screen. Here. First, I'm clearing out this label. Then I'm creating a variable for the bill amount that's going to be entered here. Then there's a variable for the split. Now with split, usually it's going to be empty. If you are just dining by yourself and you don't want to split it multiple ways, you're not going to enter any value in there. So when that happens, instead of it being empty, I'm going to make it 1 in the code. So that's what this if statement does over here. I have a variable for tip percentage. I'm just making it 15% by default, but that is going to change later in the code. The tip amount is being calculated here, straight up math. This is the total amount. If someone decides to split the check, this variable is going to hold how much each person would pay. And then these three is just formatting that we saw last time of the bill amount. Finally, the label over here is going to say that, yep, the service is good. The tip percentage, if you see, is going to be 15, and then whatever we calculated into these three variables. Let's go ahead and run whatever we have so far. I'm going to run it in iPhone size 5S. All right, build succeeded. That's good news. Here's the simulator. Let's try this out. Bill amount, let's say it's $56, and I want to calculate. So you can see good, 15% tip. There's a tip amount, there's a total amount. Each person, in this case, it's only one person pays the entire amount. If I had to split it three ways, hit calculate, you can see each person is going to pay a part of it. So this takes care of the basic math. In this case, you can see we are not asking the user to enter a tip percentage, but rather telling the user that it's going to be at 15%. Now this is only good if you want to always tip at 15%, which is not the case because the service could be great, it could be excellent. So what happens in those cases, right? So we want multiple lines in here actually, which would be good, great, excellent, and different tip percentages for that and the corresponding amount. So let's move on to achieve that. So for that, I'm first going to I'm going to introduce you the concept of arrays. In Swift, an array, like any other variable, is declared like this. So this is the tip percentage array, and it can be initialized with these square brackets, and I'm going to default it to 15, 18, 20. So when you go to a restaurant, you would see many a times when the bill comes out, the different tip percentages are printed over there. So this should be a familiar concept. It will tell you 15, 18, 20, and it just so that you don't have to do the math. Our tip calculator is going to do something similar. I'm also going to create another array. This is the emotion array, as I'm calling it. Again, I can initialize it with whatever text I want. Good. Great. And excellent. So to save on space, let's do that. So good, great, and excellent. So as you can see, an array can be just initialized with whatever data type you want it to be for. So for this array, it holds integers here, and this array, it's holding a set of strings, and that is fine. The Swift just understands it. And you would see sometimes I use var, sometimes I use let. I briefly touched upon this in our previous video, but didn't really go into it. What var means is your standard variable. It's a place, it's a container, and it can hold different values. What let is something similar, but the value assigned to it is a constant. It does not change. And what's different, a little bit different from other programming languages in Swift, is that let can be used even if the value is going to be assigned the first time to it, and after that it does not change. So that's why you can see all these values. Here I don't really know the value of this yet, right? Because it depends on what the tip amount is going to be entered. But that is okay, because the first time this variable gets the value assigned to it. After that, nowhere in the code does it change. So when that happens, you use the keyword let instead of a variable. Even if you do where, there's no harm, except here that the compiler is going to give you a warning of sorts that it's not good. Let's see what it says here. Oh, this is just here. Uh, yeah, this triangle, yellow triangle, is going to say that it's going to suggest that you replace it with a let, which we will gladly accept. So that's the difference between a variable and a let. So here we have two arrays. Now once we have these two arrays, what we really want to do here is do a little bit of iteration or a little bit of loop. We want to do the same math 3 times with these 3 different values. And that's what we are going to do here. So let's see, the first time we want to empty out whatever is in the label. That's good. We are reading the bill amount. That's good. That needs to be done once. The split amount, that needs to be done once. But everything after here, I want it to be done 3 times with different values in this array. So for that, I'm going to write a for loop. A for loop looks like this. For variable I equal to I equal to 0, I less than or equal to 2, I plus plus, and then I start my for loop, and then I'm going to end my for loop after this. So quickly, you have now created a for loop. Let's see what it's not happy about. All right, so what it's asking for is this space to be removed. There you go. That should fix that. And all right, this our code is not complete, so we'll come to that. So I'm going to indent it. Let's look at this error. Unexpected in for variable I equal to 0, I less than or equal to 2, I plus plus. It seems that it's missing a colon here, a semicolon, but as far as I can see, I have that. So let's see, we'll come back to that. So here, this is how you're creating a for loop. Now, coming back with the for loop, what you say is you're starting initializing a variable here. We'll start at 0, and it's going to be less than when I is less than or 2. So that's going to, and this is going to increment I with every time this loop runs. So you can see it starts at 0, it executes this, come back, increments I to 1, then does the same thing, then increments I to 2, then does the same thing, and now it'll continue to do that only till I is less than or equal to 2. After that, it's going to just exit out of this loop. So that's a for loop you have created. So now with this for loop, let's see, the first thing that you want to do is instead of this constant value of 15 over here, you want to use the array that you have created. So array type percentage, and I'm going to use I. And what this does is, it's basically this I goes from 0, 1, 2, as we just saw. That's the way to reference what's in this array. So this, the index of 0 is this, index at index 1 it's this, and at index 2 it is this. So as this loop executes, it's going to pull the right values, which is at 0, 1, and 2 from within this array, right? It's not liking it because unresolved identifier, because this error, we need to get rid of this error. So let me try to execute the code. And of course, build failed. Let's see, what am I missing? For variable I equal to 0, and I have a start bracket over here. Yep, so that is good. Does it need a bracket? I don't think so. I'm going to remove the space here to see if that fixes it. Yep, that fixed it. So it just didn't like the space in there, I think. So that error went away. Let's look at this. Binary operator cannot be applied. All right, so this, as you can see, this is an integer array. What we want is actually double. So last time you saw how you convert an integer to a value double, right? You just use double and then in the bracket provide whatever you pulled in as integer. So this loop works. So now this was our original intention, right? Instead of having a constant value of 15, now we are pulling different values from this array. It is going to do it 3 times. So so let's see what needs to be done. So when it comes to the output over here, I'm going to make some more space for ourselves. Instead of good, what I want again is to pull from our array of emotions here. I'm going to say array emotions, and again I'm going to use I as the variable. So there you go. So you can almost imagine this first value is going to be good, and that's what it's going to print. Now what's going to happen when the next time the loop is executed, it's going to go to great, and then this will be printing, and then it will go to excellent, and this would be printing. So at the end of it, you'd have only one line, which is the last value that we calculated at excellent. That is not our intention. We want 3 separate lines with all 3 values. So to achieve that, here's what we'll do. In this state, instead of replacing the text with this newly calculated one, I'm going to add to that. So here it's going to take that addition. So there you go. It's going to take that text. Let's see what the error is. All right, so it's asking you to put an exclamation mark at the end. Now, in general, you would see throughout when we are coding, Swift is going to ask you to insert this exclamation mark. What does that really mean? There are different ways to think of it. The easiest way that I like to think of it is as a contract between us and Swift, where Swift is saying that, look, I'm not responsible if something goes wrong here, right? So for in this example, if there's no text in there, I'm not responsible. Uh, I want you to take responsibility of making sure that everything is going to be right at that point. And we are explicitly saying that, yep, I agree, by inserting the exclamation mark. So there you go. That error goes away, and that's that. But here, as it's going to, after we print this line, we want the next set of values to be in a new line, and that's why we are going to do the same thing here. Let's grab this and going to append this thing called /n. /n tells Swift it's a new line character. It says that enter a new line character in there. So everything from that after that point is going to be in the next line. So this now we learned the concept of a loop. We are looping here multiple times. We learned the concept of how you can hold values in an array. Let's execute this to make sure everything looks good. Build succeeded. That's always a good news. Here, I'm going to enter 45. Let's split it 3 ways. Calculate. So there you go. You have good, great, excellent, 3 different tip levels. At those tip levels, what the different total amount and the tip amount would be, and how it would be split if we were to go with any of those choice. So here you're helping the user out by giving them multiple options for tip and not really asking for a single value, because from a user experience point of view, I can tell you whether the service was whether it was good or excellent, and I want your application to tell me how much I should be paying. I don't necessarily want to remember all these tip percentages. So at this point, you can see we have a neat little tip calculator that solves a real problem for the user. Now, from here, so one thing I want to cover at this point is the concept of actually managing the keyboard. So as you can see, if we go back to our view controller main storyboard here, for this particular text field, the type of keyboard I want is numbers and punctuation. So it's not going to bring up the standard character keyboard. And for split, I actually want a keyboard type which is a number pad, right? Because all we are ever going to do is enter integer values in there. So that should assign the right type of keyboard. But what we want to make sure is, here, let me show you a small problem with the keyboard. We succeeded. We come back to our application. In the hardware, keyboard. All right. So when I go in here, this is how the keyboard is going to look like, right? This is what we wanted, so that we can enter 67. And when I hit here, you can see the number pad comes up, so that worked great as well. Split it 2 ways. But now you can see that the keyboard doesn't want to go away. It's a little bit of a stubborn keyboard. How do you make it go away? I'm clicking everywhere else, clicking calculate button, it still won't go away. That's not a good user experience. So there is a way to solve for that. So for that, we go back to our code here. Hide this. In the code, I'm going to do a couple of things. So the easiest way first to achieve that is to write a function called touches began. Let me go back to the code that I want to bring over. If I simply copy this function over, what it's saying is sorry, wrong function. But I'm going to copy both of these. All right, so let's see what these functions do. So for these functions, touches began function, right? We need not know much about this function, except what this function is any time when I click anywhere outside over here in our app, which is not like a field, this function is going to be executed, and we can ask it to do whatever we want it to do. And this function here is when we are in a text field and in the keyboard we hit the return button, whatever you want it to do, it's going to do. So these are the two handy functions that we are going to use. So for touches began, let's see what we want to do in there. I'm referring my notes here real quick. Yep. So inside touches began, what we want to do is write this code: self dot view dot end editing, and true. So what this says is end any type of editing, which is the keyboard over here. You want that to be hidden, and then in the next one, which is our keyboard function, we are going to say our text field, which is the bill amount, dot resign first responder, and we are going to return true for this function, and there you go, and be done with that. So with these two functions, the keyboard should start behaving, which is basically making itself disappear as we want it to. But it's not over yet, because to use this function over here, we need to do one more thing. This function is part of the text field, and you are wanting your view controller to do something on behalf of the text field. So first, to use that function, you are going to extend the class with something called UI text field delegate, and then as the app loads, we are going to say text, this is our variable, dot delegate equals self. So with these two things added in here, this function is something that would execute. We'll go into more detail of what we just did, which is extending this class. You can see that a class can be extended from multiple different superclasses, and to see what functions there is inside all this, you can hit the command button and click on it, and it will show you all the different functions. So the function that we just used should be somewhere over here. That is, as text field should return, right? So this function is executed when the return key is pressed. We are taking this function and we are overriding it over here and asking it to do whatever we want to do. So that is how you extend this class and use a function that's defined within this, but you have to override it and have it do whatever you want to do. So when the app executes, it's not going to execute the function which is inside this, which we just saw, but rather this function over here. So with all of that, let's execute our app, and you can see when I click anywhere else, you can see the keyboard disappearing. Also, after I enter my value, if I hit return, you can see the keyboard disappearing. So, mission accomplished with how we want to control our keyboard. So that's a good handy concept to know whenever we are working with keyboard input. So with that, our calculator works, and at this point is probably a better calculator than most other calculator in the App Store. But we want to go a level ahead here, because the true use of a tip calculator is when you're traveling abroad and you don't really know how much tip to pay in that country. So for that, I'm going to add a button over here, and I'm going to make it button. By default, I want it to be United States. Right. Then I want a label. This label, I just want to call it settings. Center align. Then I'm going to do one more new control, which is picker view. So, all right. So what we are attempting to do here is whenever I click on this button, all the countries should show up here, which we would be able to select. And that's how you change your country. And that should change the tip percentage that our app uses. So once these controls are in, let me go ahead and do our handy little stacking, and for this stack as well, same horizontal in container, and I'm going to do this fixed distance from the top control at 50 and add that constraint as well. So this is what we have added. Now this is a little bit of a complex control over here, which is called the picker view. You are familiar with this, and let me reduce the font size a little bit. Okay, you're familiar with this control when you are setting your alarm, and you can see the control having hours, minutes, AM, PM, etc. Right? So this control can have like multiple columns in it, etc. For our use, we just need one column. And how you populate this is actually using arrays. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to populate this control with the countries that we want and the different tip percentages, and how that's going to be used in our tip calculation math. So thank you. I hope you learned quite a bit of programming and additional iOS development through this video. But be sure to watch the next one to see how we are going to make this even better to make it truly a global tip calculator. Thank you.